Doctor, can you explain how you feel? Because you had a chance to meet Charlie. You were on Charlie's show. He interviewed you. Can you talk about just your experience with Charlie and your thoughts on the tragedy?
Well, I'll start with the personal level. I mean, look, I think millions of people are greeting Charlie who haven't met him because he exudes a positivity. He exudes all that you would think are the great ideals of the American spirit. I can't believe that a 22-year-old guy woke up, I'm talking about the alleged assassin, and said, you know, I've got all these opportunities, right? He's a student, he's doing well, but of all the possibilities of things that I could do with my life, here is the best one. Let me go and kill this guy because he says things that I disagree with. It is so horrifying, it is so dangerous. And if we don't quell that reflex, that it is perfectly permissible to those who say things that are dangerous, we're going to go down a dark alley from which I escaped in Lebanon in 1975.
Ladies and gentlemen, back by popular demand, Dr. Gad Saad is a visiting scholar at the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom at the University of Mississippi. Y'all told me y'all want him back. One of our most popular interviews the first time, so y'all help me welcome Dr. Gad Saad.
So good to be with you. I was so happy to see you last time around. Let's continue the tango.
Yes, it was such an incredible interview. Your insight is just impeccable. And when we had the interview that we put out on my channel before the tragedy that happened to Charlie, and as soon as the tragedy happened, you know, I'm looking on the internet and I see everybody giving commentary, and I saw your commentary, and I said, I got to have him back to talk about this because it's very important for sound-minded people to have sound-minded conversations about what really matters when it comes to Charlie's life, when it comes to his legacy after his death. And so that's one of the reasons why, the biggest reason why I want to bring you on. But Doctor, can you explain how you feel? Because you had a chance to meet Charlie. You were on Charlie's show. He interviewed you. Can you talk about just your experience with Charlie and your thoughts on the tragedy?
Well, I'll start with the personal level. I mean, look, I think millions of people are greeting Charlie who haven't met him because he exudes a positivity. He exudes all that you would think are the great ideals of the American spirit. But now imagine if you do know Charlie, you're only going to appreciate and love him more. I knew him well. He was a friend. He's invited me many times on his show. He's been on my show. We met in person. We actually met in Mar-a-Lago. Last year, I was invited to a mega event, Make Education Great Again, at Mar-a-Lago. We met up there. He invited me to Turning Point USA, America Fest, where I gave a talk on, you know, how to live a happy life. So the guy is a gem overall. So it's not, to me, it was doubly angering because I would have been just as angry if I didn't know him. But to actually know him is to love him. And so I got to tell you, I was consumed. I still am consumed. Of course, time helps a bit, but I'm just floating on a dark cloud of rage. I can't believe that a 22-year-old guy woke up, I'm talking about the alleged assassin, and said, you know, I've got all these opportunities, right? He's a student, he's doing well. But of all the possibilities of things that I could do with my life, here is the best one. Let me go and kill this guy because he says things that I disagree with. It is so horrifying. It is so dangerous. And if we don't quell that reflex, that it is perfectly permissible to those who say things that are dangerous, we're going to go down a dark alley from which I escaped in Lebanon in 1975.
I couldn't agree with you more. All right, here's a stat that you probably haven't heard. 90% of Americans' tap water contains microplastics, tiny bits that you can't see, but they're ending up in your food and your blood and even inside of unborn babies. And a lot of it comes straight from the water supply. And if you're drinking from those cheap plastic bottles, you're just adding more. Heat, sunlight, they break down and leach plastic right into your water. That's a big reason why my family uses Cold Pure to filter our water, because I want every drop that we drink to be free of that junk. Researchers have found that microplastics can carry toxic chemicals and heavy metals into your body, triggering inflammation, hormone disruption, and weakening the immune system. And what's even scarier is that studies have shown that we consume a credit card worth of plastic every week. And once that plastic is in you, it doesn't just go away. It builds up over time. You've heard me talk about Cove Pure before, and that's because my wife Corinne and I have 2 young boys, and we don't take chances. We use Cove Pure every single day at home, and I have one for my office as well. They love it here. And it's the only purifier I trust to protect my family and my team. Cove Pure Clear Wave technology is lab certified to remove up to 99.9% of impurities. So what you're drinking is just clean, pure water. And with Cove Pure, you don't have to worry about microplastics, forever chemicals, lead, or fluoride. To set it up, there is no plumbing or drilling needed. All you got to do is fill it up, plug it in, and enjoy pure water at a perfect temperature, whether it's hot or cold. You've thought about investing in water filtration before, so what's stopping you? Water is vital for our existence, and clean water is one of the best investments that you can make. Bureaucrats aren't going to protect you, so protect yourself. All you gotta do is go to covepure.com/Tatum right now and save $200 with my special link while supplies last. It's perplexing to me that, because there's many people that I despise what they say, right? I mean, they annoy the living daylights. I want to throw my phone out of the window and run it over when some people speak because I think they're just insufferable. However, I have never in my life thought I want to harm this person, fight this person, do anything to this person. I just turn them off. I just don't have to listen. It's not like I'm forced to have it in my eardrum every day. I just don't have to. The kid could have just not watched Charlie Kirk. The kid didn't even go to the university. He could have just not have traveled 3 hours or so, or 2 hours, 3 hours to go to the event anyway. He can block and say, I'm not interested on Instagram when he see Charlie Kirk or conservative content. And it's a shame, but there's a bigger issue here that I feel like people are missing. One, because others are focusing on conspiracy theory, which is insane to me at this point. I mean, Charlie hasn't been buried yet, and it's all these conspiracies out here. And then others are drawing into other narratives, like the Jews and all kind of other stuff, but not focusing on the mental illness and cult-like behavior of some of these most violent people that I think, Doctor, we've taken for granted. I used to go to campuses with no security, and we just didn't think we thought they were lunatics enough to turn the table over and slap your products off the table and maybe cuss at you and spit. But we never thought they would be killers. But there's something bigger going on.
Indeed. Look, I've been doing this for a long time, and regrettably, I've had to have oftentimes big security details. And I'll just give you one example from the recent past. I went to Los Angeles to the Saban Theater, very famous theater, to receive an award from a Jewish organization that was giving me an award for all of my, contributions to the fight for the Jewish people and so on. And this was a Jewish event, right? So I wasn't going to an Antifa riot. This was a Jewish event, and I had to have U.S. Marshals and Israeli Special Force securities around. But this was in LA. This wasn't in Yemen. It wasn't in Pakistan. It wasn't in Raqqa, Syria. It was in LA at a Jewish event. I'm Jewish. Why do I have to be surrounded by so many? I mean, there was even a point. So the gentleman, the U.S. Marshal who was with me, was just a massive mountain of a man. Of course, he's armed. And at one point, my son walks into the green room, and the guy just goes sort of aggressively towards him, keep him away from me, not knowing that this is my son. That tells you something, right? 10, 15, 20 years ago, a professor who's going to go and speak about things like the importance of freedom of speech would not need a whole militia protecting him in LA, but that's the world we live in. It's tragic. And if people don't, quickly wake up, it's very, very easy to lose our freedoms. I'm sure you know this quote, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's from Ronald Reagan, where he says that in every generation, you have to be attentive because they are the enemies of freedom that are always looking to make you lose all your freedoms. It's not as though you win the battle for freedom and then you could rest forevermore. Every generation, you have to fight again for your freedoms. I hope that we can eternalize Ronald Reagan's message.
Yes, I'm very hopeful that we do that moving forward. I mean, this maniac was a once in a generation maniac, right? And you see every so often somebody's willing to assassinate a political figure and ruin their entire lives. And when I looked at some of the messages that were shipped back and forth between him and the roommate, it was zero remorse for Charlie Kirk. I mean, not one instance where he thought to himself like, dang, I shouldn't have done it. He only thought about, I don't want to get caught.
Yeah.
I had my own opportunity. I want to save me, and I want to save the roommate who is his girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever they're doing. And he wanted to save that person and say, delete the message, don't talk to the media. I mean, he had not one iota of empathy for Charlie Kirk. And the problem is that all of this is over a lie.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk being hateful is a lie. Charlie Kirk being racist and a bigot, and it's a lie. What are your thoughts on that? What's causing these people's brains? Like is it the media, or is it upbringing, or is it just the natural affections of human beings to just be hypnotized with hatred and evilness because they just don't like a person?
Well, you're not going to like my answer. I think it's an indelible part of the architecture of the human mind to be potentially parasitized. Now, it is true, as we discussed in the first time that I came on your show, that there are currently some parasitic ideas that are specific to the moment, right? So postmodernism and cultural relativism and radical feminism, these are contemporary parasitic ideas. But the capacity for the human mind to be completely zombified is just a regrettable feature of how our brains are designed. Now, some of us have a natural built-in immunity against the nonsense, but many people don't. And I don't know if I've mentioned this last time around when I drew the analogy with the Salem witches. Did we talk about this last time? Maybe we did, but I'll just repeat it. Look, a couple of hundred years ago, it was totally reasonable to the people who lived in Salem, Massachusetts, to say that, look, I think Linda's acting suspiciously. I think she's a witch. Why don't we throw her in the lake? And if she ends up swimming, that proves that she is a witch. So we'll burn her at the stake. And if she drowns, oops, I guess we were wrong. Now, it's not as though those were quacks, right? The whole village actually believed that, right? So I guess the bigger challenge is to know which of us is born with the inoculation against this nonsense. But although, even if you're born with the proclivity to be parasitized, I'd like to think that there's a way we can give you a mind vaccine to try to protect you against this nonsense. One possibility would be precisely to talk to people with whom you disagree, right? Look, I'm drawing you a great analogy, and I'm almost certain I didn't mention this last time I was on the show. In evolutionary medicine, there's something called the hygiene hypothesis, which basically says that if you want, for example, children to grow up not having autoimmune diseases, you need to have their immune system triggered so that it could optimally function. So, for example, kids who grow up with a lot of pet down there, who grow up on farms, are much less likely to have asthma than kids who grow up in very sterile environments. Why? Because the immune system, in order to maximally build a response, it needs to be triggered. It needs to face stressors. Now, how do I draw the analogy between that two ideas? You can see how. Well, our brain is supposed to be exposed to opposing ideas. That's how I become a better thinker, because I have to then predict what are going to be your responses to my positions so I can build better arguments. But imagine this guy, the 22-year-old alleged assassin. He goes down deep. He does a deep dive into what was it called? Discord and Reddit and all this stuff. Everybody is amplifying his paranoia. Everybody's amplifying his delusion. So there is no allergen, in this case, an opposing idea. There is no Gad Saad saying, hey, wait a minute, imbecile. What about this? In which case, it might snap him out of his delusion. And so I think that's why the loss of Charlie is so big, because that's exactly what he was doing. He was the allergen going out there into the campuses saying, hey, prove me wrong. Talk to me. I'm not going to beat you up. You're not going to beat me up. I have a position, you have yours. Maybe I'll learn something from you. And that's what's dangerous, because people say we can't have dialogue. Well, guess what? If you don't have dialogue today, you'll have violence in Lebanon tomorrow.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've been to campus and I talk to these people, and some of them are just out of their minds. And there are some people who are reasonable. And unfortunately, well, it's it's a hard, I could say, survey to take, because not everybody who is reasonable will even come to the mic anyway. So, and the people who want confrontation or maybe unreasonable are more likely to come to the mic because they're narcissistic and they want to be engaged, and some of them are doing it because they just want to gotcha or they want to be on camera. So it's disproportionate, in my opinion, of the population of the university, right? So I don't think it's a reflection of most students that are this radical. But the radicals do show up, and there are more radicals than there are reasonable. No, I take that back. It's slightly more reasonable than radical, but the radicals are completely off. And what I've noticed is that when you're talking to them, no matter what you say, they won't receive it. Even if while they're standing in front of you, I see the light switch go off in their head. I see the light bulb turn on in their head. Like, dang, he got me. I never thought of that before. But they, in front of their peers, they cannot lose the argument, so they get mad. They result to violence or violent rhetoric. Like, they yell at you, they cuss you out, they call you names, and they flip you off and all this stuff that I've noticed when I was on campus. But then there's a remnant of people, like you said, they have the capacity to be open-minded. They come with an idea, but they're ready to listen. And then once you start introducing things to them that they've never heard before, it's like, whoa, hey, maybe my position has changed. And I think that's why Charlie really loved doing the events, because he had the crazy ones, which they make the internet, right? They go viral. But but Charlie talking for 3 hours, like I would do, you do bless a lot of people, but it may not be viral, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I've learned, a little bit being on campus.
Well, I'll build on what you just said. So you said about how there are some people who, irrespective of how much evidence you show them, they're not going to budge. So I'm going to link that point to something that happened to me last year on a show. It was a British psychiatrist who had invited me on his show. And I think the last question that he asked me on his show, and it remains the only time that anyone has ever asked me this on a show. He said, Professor Saad, you've been a behavioral scientist, a psychologist for 30 plus years. What is the singular phenomenon that has most surprised you about the human condition? I mean, I don't have the exact words, but that's the gist of what he asked. And so that I had to pause for a second and think about it. And then after about 2-3 seconds, I said, the inability for most people to change their minds once that position is very anchored, right? And in a sense, that's a pessimistic perspective, because I'm in the business of changing minds, yet I'm the guy who's telling you that it's almost an impossible Herculean effort. There's a great quote that I cite from The Parasitic Mind from Leon Festinger, who is the pioneer of the theory of cognitive dissonance, where he goes through great length to explain the types of mental gymnastics that people will engage in so that they are never proven to be wrong, right? And I'll just add one other quick point. I actually had this gentleman on my show maybe about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. There's a book that was written by 2 French psychologists about maybe 5-6 years ago. The title of the book is The Enigma of Reason, and where they argue that our capacity to reason did not evolve in an evolutionary Darwinian sense. It did not evolve in order to seek some objective truth, but rather it evolved to win arguments. And so that's exactly what you see when you have this hyper tribalism, right? I don't care how much evidence you show me that, of course, there are innate sex differences between men and women. There are hormonal differences, morphological differences, physiological differences, anatomical differences, behavioral differences. La, la, la. I don't want to hear it. As a matter of fact, the more evidence you show me that is contrary to my position, the stronger I believe in my position. So that's a hell of a tough battle to be in, because I wake up every day, and in your own way, you wake up every day trying to shape the discussion. But the reality is that we have to work extra hard just to change a single mind.
Right, that's right. Dr. Saad, I noticed that, this to be true. It seems almost as if the targeting of a person's perceived identity is what really messes people up, right? And I experienced it to a certain degree when I first came out. I was a Democrat, and police were bad, and Barack Obama was the best president ever. He was a black man, all that stuff. And then people started, but I was open minded. But the first time you hear something, and this is the crux of whether a person can be successful in life or not. The first time you hear something, I don't think it's a problem that there's a pushback in your mind, right? There's an adversity there. There's a like, whoa, wait. But how you overcome that is the difference maker. Because when I heard something that just completely challenges what I believe, I'm gonna give you an example. I do this all the time with the Bible, and Christians get mad at me over this stuff. But people have challenged me on the Bible, which forced me to go and look up stuff. And sometimes I have to. It reveals things to me that I thought were true or were not true that begin to be true, or like vice versa. Just like the writing of the Bible, right? I used to think that the Bible was, people say it's infallible, right? The English translation of the Bible is infallible, and I used to hold true to that. The King James version was the only version. I used to hold true to that. And somebody called me out and they said, "You don't even know how the Bible is written. So how are you going to say that?" And it hit me like, I don't know how it was written. I don't know how they translate it. I don't know the process. I know that it was, but I don't know the process. But when I go look it up, it challenged everything I knew to be true. Because then I started realizing, well, wait a minute. Hebrew doesn't directly translate into English. Some of the strong Hebrew words are too powerful to encapsulate. The English language is infinite when it comes to encapsulating the true meaning of Hebrew words. And like in the scripture where the Bible says in the Old Testament, the God told Moses, "I am that I am." Well, they had to write "I am that I am" in English because it couldn't encapsulate the meaning of, I think it's Aya, Asher, Aya. I could be saying it wrong. But that's over 120 English word combinations just for 3 Hebrew words. And so those things like that make me, but it challenges me at first. And then it makes me open up to say, well, dang, now that I got this new information, to me, I feel liberated. Yeah. I don't feel like it's bad. I have resistance initially, but then I feel liberated. And I just wish that more people would be that way, because the entire dramatization and politicization, I'm probably saying that word wrong, of our country and the hatred and division that we see all comes from lies and deception. If we actually sat down and looked at how many genders there are scientifically, and we came to a consensus, if we sat down and looked at the fact that someone says that Donald Trump is a racist, let's go back together and look at everything that he said, the body of work in context. No one would have that declaration, and we wouldn't hate each other today, right? And it's the same thing about Charlie, like the Charlie situation. You got a remnant of people that think he's a racist, and this is why they bash him on campus.
Yeah, I was gonna so 2 points to make. Number one, and this is not just to give you frivolous compliments. I mean it. I'm someone who's very stingy with my compliments. One of the reasons why I think you're successful, only having met you now twice, is I exactly think is because you're open-minded. Now, to compare you to the GOAT of podcasting, who of course is a personal friend of mine, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the epitome of being open-minded, right? He sits down. I mean, sometimes he's so open-minded that he's prone to, believing in conspiracies, right? Because, he's like, hey, let's talk about it, right? But I mean, that's exactly what makes someone appealing in front of the camera. That's why you were able to build a large audience. If every single time you opened the camera, either to do a monologue or to invite a guest, you talked over them, you knew more than them, there's nothing that you could learn from them, you probably wouldn't be very compelling to watch, right? Look, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, which makes me actually quite epistemologically humble, right? When I know something and I have built my arguments tightly, good luck to you if you want to debate me. But you could ask me, hey, what are your views in terms of the legalization of marijuana? And I'm going to answer you, hey, that's a great question. I just don't know enough about it to be able to offer you a good, intelligent response that would satisfy you. Well, that builds trust, because my saying, hey, I don't know everything, already the audience is drawn in because they say, we can trust this guy because he's comfortable enough to say, hey, I know this, but I don't know that. So being open-minded being authentic is the way that you are able to have meaningful conversation. Second, very quick point. At first, it's going to seem as though it's not related to what we're talking about, but it will be. I will tie it all back together. So in 1990, I began my PhD at Cornell. So first semester, I get there. I'm Lebanese. I speak Arabic. So I start hanging around with a bunch of Arab students. We're always playing soccer together. One day, one of these guys invites, and this is going to be, by the way, this story is told in my forthcoming book, Suicidal Empathy. So you're getting a exclusive right here. So one day, one of these guys says, "Hey, I want to invite you out for a coffee." I said, "Okay, great." So we go to sit down. He's a Muslim. So as we sit down, he's kind of shifting uncomfortably, and he goes, "You know, you're such a smart guy. How come you haven't converted to Islam yet?" So then I paused. I said, "Oh, is this what this meeting is about? Because I don't think it's going to go well if you're going to hit me with this kind of stuff." So then he pauses. So he realizes he can't go full frontal on me. So he goes, Gad, I really like you. You're such a cool guy. And then I pause and I smile. I go, "You say that with a bit of hesitation." "Oh, I know why. It's because I'm Jewish, right?" And so he goes, "No, but come on, Gad, you're not a Jew. I said, "No, no, no. I'm a Jew. He goes, "No, no, but you're not. You know what I mean." Now, why am I saying all this story? Because that relates to cognitive dissonance and changing your opinion. He has a vision of what a Jew should be like. He came out of the womb and he was fed. Jews are demons. Jews have horns. Look at their tails, right? Then he meets this Jew who speaks Arabic like he does, who plays soccer better than all of the Arabs combined, who's really fun and warm and lovely. I can't accept that in my brain because I've been taught that the Jew is the devil. Therefore, he removes the identity. I'm not really a Jew. Like a real Jew would be maybe Steven Spielberg, but not the Arabic guy. That's one of us. You're an Arab, really. And so even when he was exposed to a nice Jew, it couldn't resonate in his brain. He had to change me into being a fake Jew in order for him to love me.
That's the same thing happens to me as a black. In America, the concept of being black in America, which is it don't even matter anywhere else in the world. Anywhere else in the world, you're either an American or you're not. But in America, somehow we divide each other by race. And to be honest, in the black community, is whether you dark enough, because the
Yes.
darker you are, the more black you are, the lighter you are, you're mixed and you're biracial, and they kind of shun you. But
Yeah.
I experienced a very similar thing. It's because people, they look at you and they think because you black, you believe a certain way.
Yeah.
So then once you articulate yourself, like, or articulate your points, and you go, "Well, I don't think like that." They go, "Oh, really?
So you're a
Something
fake.
must be different." Right. I'm different. I'm not like them. And it's like, no, we are not all alike, even though we're black. So they don't mean if I'm this, I'm not like a black person, and the black, and I'm gonna tell you where I get it from. I get it from black people. It's not
Yeah.
outside. It's internal. It's like black people look at me and go, "Oh, you a sellout. They call me Uncle Tom. You a
Of course.
bootlicker. Like you selling your soul to the white man." And it's like cognitive dissonance. It's okay to be black and think like this. It's okay to be black and be married to a white woman. It's okay to be black and dress a different way, or want to live in a certain community, or be articulate, or go to university and get degrees. And it's okay to be black and be diversified.
Well, I mean,
But
think about, forgive me for interrupting you. Think about, it's probably the highest form of racism that they're throwing at you because they're saying you don't have personal agency and personal dignity, right? There is no mind that is specific to you. What defines you is that you're just some indistinguishable cog that is connected to other cogs that share your skin you. And the second that you say, "Well, wait a minute, I've got my own idea. Wait a second, I actually love Thomas Sowell." And then they'll say, "What? Thomas Sowell? That's another white man. That's another fake black guy." So now we've got you, who's a fake black guy. We got Thomas Sowell, who's a fake black guy. So that's, to me, that's the highest form of racism because, as you said, it's coming from within.
1,000%. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm glad you brought that up. I think people will find it very interesting. I wanna talk about this last part,
Sure.
and it's the idea that somehow the Jews are responsible for killing Charlie Kirk. You know, the Jews killed Jesus and the Jews killed Charlie Kirk. So, but I want you to talk about how we got here, because this everything I think about, Dr. Saad, is not what people do, it's why they're doing it.
Yes,
So
sir.
people are blaming the Jews for all this stuff. I get it. I hear them. Okay, we get it. But the question is, why are people resorting to this type of behavior? And I know you have a theory of six, and I'm gonna let you finish it because I
All
forget
right.
what it's called. But the
Yes, yes.
theory of six, like 6 degrees of
That's right.
that it's a
So
Jew fault in everything else that happened in America or in
indeed.
society.
So I call it 6 degrees of Jew. It is a
So yeah,
play on 6 degrees of separation. The idea being that within the world, any two people could be connected in 6 or fewer steps. And there's actually been scientific studies going back into the 70s that have shown that you can actually link, as long as you don't live in a closed society, right? If you're living in Papua New Guinea or in the Amazon and you're literally detached from the rest of the world, I could link any two people in 6 degrees or less. And of course, that led to the popular game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. And so I took that and I called it 6 Degrees of Jew, which means I give you any calamity. A Amazonian frog just died in the Amazon. You've got 6 degrees or less to explain why the Amazonian frog died because of the Jew. Anything. Your wife cheated on you, Jew. You got diabetes, Jew. And it turns out that people, I mean, sometimes people play the game facetiously. They're just having fun with me. But other times they say, of course, they usually will call me, of course, Jew, we can do it. And then they'll give you the logic. So, I'll give you a few of these, by the way. Last time we discussed how I think the sharks that attacked the tourists in Egypt were Zionist sharks. Did we do that on this show? Was that on that show?
it was
Yes, it was.
the last one. You mentioned it briefly.
Briefly, okay. Okay. Your wife cheated on you. All right. Let's link it to the Jews. You ready? Well, she probably watched some porn because she's a beautiful angel. And the only way that she could be pulled into doing something like this is that she probably consumed some porn behind my back. Who controls the pornography industry? It's the Jews. Okay, let's talk about the assassin of Charlie Kirk. He was with a trans person. Who really spread transgender stuff in the world? It's the Jews. By the way, it doesn't have to be that what they're saying is actually true or not. You just have to put the marker Jew and it becomes real, right? I got diabetes. I don't have diabetes, but let's say I had diabetes. Why do I have diabetes? Because who controls the pharmaceutical industry? The Jews. Why are they not giving us the cure despite the fact that they probably have it? Because then they could make tons of money by having all the insulin revenue come in. What do we know that the Jews love? They love the money. I just proved to you that diabetes still exists because it's the Jew. Now, the more important thing to answer, though, is what causes that reflex? Why, throughout history, has there been, I mean, all bigotry is bad and disastrous. It's a cancer to the human spirit. But there is something historically unique about Jew hatred. First of all, because it has existed since time immemorial. And I think I do have, I mean, there are several factors, but I'm going to propose one here for you that is rooted very much in psychology. So in psychology, we have this concept called the self-serving bias. The self-serving bias is a means by which people attribute successes and failures in their lives. And this is how it usually works. Successes, I attribute them internally. So why did I do well on the exam? Well, that's because I'm very smart and I studied hard. Why did I do poorly on the exam? Well, that's because Professor Saad is an asshole Jew. So I attribute failures externally and I attribute successes internally. And that's a beautiful ego defensive strategy, right? It allows me to walk around the world saying I'm a great guy, okay? Now imagine if I have the external cause of all my individual and societal failures. It's the Jew. Why did I never get a break as an actor? Who controls Hollywood? It's not because I suck and I have no talent. It's because it's the Jews that control Hollywood. But now the next question comes, but why should you use the Jews as the culprit? Well, because the Jews, and Thomas Sowell pointed to this. I don't know if you remember when Thomas Sowell was asked, what would it take for people to stop hating the Jews? He paused and said, fail. They have to fail. So look at the dynamics. Jews constitute 0.02% or whatever the number is of people in the world. There's only 15 million Jews in the world, yet they have a quarter of the Nobel Prizes. Everywhere they go, they are a minuscule minority. I mean, short of Israel now. They're a minuscule minority, and they are punching 7 weight classes above their weight. That pisses people off, because when I walk into my class, who is the dean of the medical school? It's the Jew. Who is leading? Who is the guy who is the top music producer? It's the Jew. Well, F the Jews. I'm tired of the Jews. That's why I'm failing. So yes, there are theological reasons why people hate the Jews. Like Christians have their reasons why they hate the Jews. Muslims have their reasons why they hate Jews. But even if you remove those, simply the fact that the Jews are always a small minority and yet overtly successful is always going to breed, well, we know envy, right? There are 7 deadly sins, of which one is envy. We know in the Bible, in the 10 Commandments, we've got do not covet, right? So I don't like seeing that asshole Jew next to me always being successful. So you put all that mixed together, and it becomes easy for people to say, oh, Charlie Kirk, he was killed by the Jews.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see people saying it's crazy to me. I'm like, how do you hit a guy that confessed to his father who turned him in, who also there's other witnesses, because him and his father went together to turn him in to the sheriff, who was his neighbor, that convinced him. I guess the sheriff came in the house, and this was in the indictment. The sheriff came to the house and sat down on the couch, and it convinced him, hey, turn yourself in, give over all the evidence over, and then you have text messages from the roommate. Then you have a guy writing stuff on bullets, and then you have him on video. He came to the scene. He got the gun in his pant leg. Then he shot, and he left, and he's fleeing the scene, jumping off the roof. People got video of him running from the scene. I mean, you have every ounce of evidence, and in his Discord channel and conversations with the roommate matches exactly what he physically did by throwing the gun into the bushes and wrapped in a black all that stuff matches. And how that jumped to Israel is insane to me. And I know that there were people who believed that Charlie had, which I think is the craziest, most ridiculous thing ever. I think that Charlie may have been upset about a few things, right? I think he may have been upset about Benjamin Netanyahu. He may have disagreed with some of the ways that Benjamin Netanyahu did things, maybe the way he communicated, the way, or lack thereof. He may have been upset about a few things, but it never occurred to me or anybody else that ever seen Charlie or knew Charlie that somehow he was going to turn against Israel. Like all the beautiful things he said. I mean, literally the Zionist goat himself. I mean, he was literally whooping people across the aisle and telling the truth. That's undeniable facts. It's not his opinion. He was just fact-based, laying it out there his entire career. And all of a sudden, because he didn't like something that Netanyahu did, or he felt a little pressure from donors, which I understand, because Tucker Carlson speaking on stage made me feel some type of way, right? I was like, wow, why is he here? And then he after his fallout, not before. Tucker Carlson's the man before. Then he started getting crazy, and then some other people that were on stage. So I can kind of see why there could have been a conflict there, but I don't think that Charlie at all was like turning on Israel. I mean,
Well,
what are you?
yeah, I mean, I actually, I have just from personal anecdotes, it's the exact opposite. I know that at one point when some folks were going around, angry at Charlie, Jewish folks who were angry at Charlie for not having reacted, as vehemently in support of something that they wanted, and started accusing him of being anti-Israel and anti-Jewish, he was very upset, and both he and I think it was his producer off air intimated, what do you think? Could you what are your thoughts on that? And then so if I remember correctly, I had gone out and put out a post saying, hey guys, cut it out, stop it. So Charlie was genuinely hurt that people were doubting of his love towards the Jewish people in general and Israel in particular. So it's exactly the opposite of what people are accusing him of right now that I saw in my personal interaction. So it's just bullshit. And what pisses me off is that, man, it's been a week actually just now. Exactly right now. It's about a week that it's happened.
Well,
Can't we give the guy a bit of a break? Can't we just honor his memory before we start all the shenanigans? But that just shows you the darkness of the human heart. I mean, which I don't know if we were going to talk about this. Just some of the reactions that people have had. I think you mentioned earlier there are a lot of people that that hold positions that you hate. I'm sure you don't sit there, doing with voodoo dolls trying to kill them, right? I mean, I have guys who send me death threats, and I genuinely, not because I'm the Buddha, I genuinely never thought I hope they die of cancer. It's just not part of my makeup. I mean, yes, if you're going to attack me to try to kill me, then I'm going to be violent with you in return. But it's not in my makeup to wish you ill, despite the fact that I'm, as you said, despise every single position you take. There's this Egyptian comic, I don't know if you know him, Bassem Youssef. Apparently, people say that we look alike. I don't think so. I think I'm much better looking than he is, and certainly a hell of a lot smarter. But in any case, Bassem is someone that the second that I see him, I go into sort of a catatonic shock, the extent to which I find him vile and grotesque. I don't wish him ill. I don't want him harmed. I want to beat him with better ideas. So there is nothing wrong with you hating someone's ideas, but celebrating the fact that he no longer exists and two children are going to go to their mother and say, hey, what time is daddy coming home? Man, you're a demon.
yeah, oh, you it's like I think about it in reverse, right? There's a lot of politicians on the left that I think are absolutely evil for real. And I personally I believe we have evidence that they're evil. They making it up about Charlie. Like we actually see that they're evil. They say evil things. They call for violence, all kind of crazy stuff they do. But if something happened to Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton or any one of the Ilhan Omar, which I cannot stand her,
Yes.
I wish we would deport her.
Yes.
AOC, unfortunately, we can't deport AOC at any cost because she was born here. But if anything were to happen to them, you will never catch me opening my mouth or fixing my lips to say anything negative about them. What will happen is I won't say nothing. I'm
Right.
not going to get on and lie and say, oh, she was a good person. I did. No, I ain't going to say that. I'm not going to lie, but I definitely won't disparage them. But also, what's even worse is when somebody knows you and then go out and leverages your name and reputation for personal gain or to prove a point. I think that's even worse.
Comic? Are you thinking of a certain comic? Is that what's happening right here?
Yeah, I'm thinking of somebody in the comic industry. I think it's the comic you were talking about,
Yes, sir.
or the person maybe should be considered a comic because of the just unserious behavior. I'll just say this: like I don't understand the man Charlie haven't even been buried yet, and people are just leveraging his name and reputation in order to. I don't know if it's malicious. I don't know if it's by accident. I don't know if it's because it's just sheer sadness that some people's reflection, their reflex is to act out in a certain way, but it's just wrong. We need to make the main thing the main thing. Let's talk about his legacy, and I mean across the board. Now the dummies are going to hate him, but the people who love him, I really wish that I could see a coming together of people who love him, even if they disagree, to say this is about Charlie. This is about his future, his legacy, his children, what he started with the youth at Turning Point USA. It's not about Jews. It's not about any of these other things. It's really, we should be talking about what are we going to do now? What am I going to do on my platform to help with Charlie if I'm going to mention Charlie's name? And I wish that we would get back to that. I don't know why we can't.
Hey, man, I'll tell you, I'll end this part about Charlie with one. I don't think I've ever said this before. So we have said two children, one of whom is a daughter, a teenage daughter. Maybe it's because I'm Gad Saad, maybe because I'm from the Middle East. The idea of my daughter ever dating anyone is completely an impossible thing, that there's no way And I'm an evolutionary psychologist who should understand mating behavior. It is an impossibility. Every single man on earth who could ever come, I want them eradicated from the face of the earth. But now here comes to Charlie. If I were to ever think of a prototype of a boy that if you brought me home to meet my daughter, I might be able to swallow, it would be somebody that looks like Charlie Kirk, because everyone else is going to die. And
Yeah.
so that really is the ultimate kind of colorful way I can express what a beautiful soul he was. He is truly someone that fathers can look at him and say, I think he could be good for my daughter. And if you can get a Middle Eastern man to have that thought, you're probably a really good guy.
All right, I love that. I love that, Dr. Saad. I think that's a good way to end the discussion, man. I always appreciate you coming on. It's always great. And ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, Dr. Gad Saad, visiting scholar at the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom at the University of Mississippi. And so I
Mississippi.
appreciate you. Can you tell them where to follow you just real quick, and how
Yes,
can they
sir.
get the books? I want them to get these books. I feel like I'm just smarter. Listen to you talk about what's in the book.
Oh, you're very
So
kind. So there's a whole bunch of books, but the most recent ones are The Parasitic Mind, the yellow one over here, The Parasitic Mind. This one right here is The Sad, SAAD, The Sad Truth About Happiness. It's a book about that mixes my personal experiences with ancient wisdoms, with contemporary science to hopefully offer you some prescriptions of how to live a good life. People always say, how come you tackle all these difficult subjects, but you always seem to be having fun? You always have a smile on your face. That's why I wrote that book. My forthcoming book, Suicidal Empathy, should hopefully drop in the next 6 months. Be on the lookout for that. You could follow me, of course, on X, Gad, Gad, Saad. And I've got a show called The Sad Truth. Check it out.
all right, love it, love it. God bless you. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you guys next time.